Welcome to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit, where we don't just cruise past the headlines, we downshift, dissect, and decode every move shaking up the automotive world. Today's story isn't just about tariffs. It's about a full-blown trade collision between two of the most interconnected automotive economies, the United States and Canada. As President Trump's aggressive 25% import tariff throws a wrench into North America's finely tuned manufacturing machine, Canada's response has set the global supply chain quaking. And for carmakers, consumers, and industry insiders, this isn't just politics. It's a high-stakes detour that could reshape how cars are built, sold, and shipped across borders. Buckle up. Here's how it all went off-road. Number 1. Where the trade turbulence began. The conflict ignited on April 2, 2025, when President Donald Trump pulled the trigger on a sweeping 25% tariff against imported automobiles and auto parts. Dubbed Liberation Day by the administration, the move was framed as a bold strike to boost American manufacturing and close long-standing trade deficits. But instead of a celebration, it kicked off a diplomatic pileup. This policy blindsided much of the industry. Why? Because the US, Canada, and Mexico don't just trade cars, they build them together. North America's automotive ecosystem runs like a well-oiled V8. Parts zigzag across the border multiple times before becoming a finished vehicle. Disrupt that rhythm, and the whole machine sputters. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't mince words. In a stern address, he declared that the era of automatic alignment with US trade interests was over. No more business as usual. Instead, Carney announced plans to reevaluate trade alliances and signaled Canada would no longer be a silent passenger in Washington's protectionist convoy. This first volley lit the spark. What followed was a chain reaction of retaliation, uncertainty, and high-octane policy shifts, centered squarely on the automotive industry. And that brings us to Canada's countermeasure, one designed not just to retaliate, but to recalibrate. Number 2. Canada's comeback plan on the trade track. Canada responded not with panic, but precision. Carney's administration quickly announced counter-tariffs targeting US goods designed to maximize economic and political pressure. From agricultural exports to consumer products, the idea was clear: hit back where it hurts most, industries vital to key US swing states. Though exact product lists were initially withheld, sources hinted at a strategic focus on goods with high visibility and domestic lobbying power. Think trucks, bottled beverages, and household staples. But tariffs were just one gear in Canada's broader strategy. Carney unveiled a larger shift, a trade realignment meant to reduce overdependence on US markets. This meant deepening ties with Europe and the Asia-Pacific, where agreements like CETA and the CPTPP already gave Canada a diplomatic head start. Bilateral meetings with France, the UK, and Japan have reportedly accelerated since the tariff announcement. It was a bold play. Absorb some economic turbulence now to future-proof the economy against similar shocks down the road. While the transition won't be seamless, the message was clear. Canada isn't going to idle at the curb while trade routes are redrawn. Before we delve deeper, do us a favor and smash that like and subscribe button. This helps us reach more auto enthusiasts just like you. Now let's shift gears, because the tremors from these tariffs hit the auto industry hardest and fastest. Number 3. Tariff aftershocks in the auto arena. Few industries felt the tremors faster than the auto sector. North America's auto manufacturing system thrives on just-in-time logistics, where parts arrive exactly when needed, keeping costs low and efficiency high. Throwing a 25% tariff into that mix is like dumping sand in the transmission. According to analysts, American consumers could soon see price hikes of $6,000 or more on vehicles imported from Canada and Mexico. Models like the Toyota Tacoma, Ford Edge, and Chevrolet Equinox. And that's assuming production doesn't grind to a halt first. Interestingly, the United Auto Workers, UAW union, broke from its typical opposition to Trump's trade policies and endorsed the tariffs. UAW President Shawn Fain argued that underutilized American plants could pick up the slack leading to potential job gains on U.S. soil. In his words, "We've got the space, we've got the workers, now let's bring the jobs home." But it's not that simple. Automakers operate on razor-thin margins and global sourcing networks. Re-engineering a supply chain isn't just costly, it's time-consuming. Plants that rely on Canadian-built transmissions or Mexican wiring harnesses can't switch suppliers overnight. The ripple effect could lead to delays, job losses, and shuttered assembly lines. In the long term, OEMs may be forced to rethink their North American strategies altogether, possibly shifting production overseas or turning to automation to reduce reliance on cross-border labor. Either way, the tariffs have already begun to reshape conversations in boardrooms from Detroit to Ontario. And as this industrial fallout escalates, the economic and political reverberations are spreading well beyond the factory floor. Number 4, economic shockwaves and political fallout. What started as a tariff scuffle in the auto sector has now snowballed into a broader economic and geopolitical rumble. President Trump's sweeping tariff playbook didn't stop at cars. It hit industries like agriculture and pharmaceuticals, fueling fears of inflation and even a potential recession. Economists and industry leaders alike warned that global supply chains, already fine-tuned for efficiency, were now at risk of stalling out. On the Canadian side, Prime Minister Carney's no-nonsense response won praise at home. But with that assertiveness came tough questions. Can Canada afford to pivot away from its largest trading partner without denting its own economy? Developing new trade corridors takes time, investment, and diplomatic finesse, resources that don't magically appear overnight. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is watching this North American standoff with a wary eye. If two of the globe's most tightly connected economies can turn on each other, what does that say about the stability of global trade as a whole? With global markets rattled and pressure building, all eyes are now on the next move. Will it be negotiation or a deeper rift? Number 5, looking ahead, negotiation or collision course. Despite the bluster on both sides, there are faint signals of diplomacy in the air. In their first official phone call, Trump and Carney actually managed a productive chat, a far cry from the combative tone of past leadership. Both agreed to open negotiations post-election, with ministerial-level talks heating up in the meantime. But here's the reality. Timing is everything, and the calendar isn't on anyone's side. Carney is knee-deep in election campaigning, and Trump's America First drumbeat is only getting louder. As it stands, those April 2nd tariffs look locked in. And Trump's stance? Crystal clear. He's not backing down. These tariffs, he claims, are permanent 100%, with the goal of bringing back American manufacturing muscle. Carney, meanwhile, is doubling down on diversification. He's already in talks with European leaders about collaborative efforts in automotive and energy, hinting that Canada's looking to build trade bridges elsewhere. European headlines now ask, is Canada finally stepping out of America's economic shadow? But let's not spin the wheel too far. Despite the current rift, the Canada-US bond is deeply welded together. Untangling decades of shared production lines and energy exchanges won't happen overnight. And until it does, both countries stand to take a hit. So how do we make sense of it all? Let's put it in park and break it down. Final verdict: trade war with no finish line. So what are we left with? A cross-border conflict that's revving up costs, straining relationships, and making auto supply chains as unpredictable as spring weather in Detroit. Both nations have dug in, and yet neither can truly afford to burn the bridge that's carried decades of trade. But we're not at the checkered flag just yet. With elections looming and trade talks inching forward behind closed doors, there's still hope that cooler heads will prevail, and this trade tiff won't turn into a full-blown economic tailspin. Before you hit the road, let's hear from you. Do you think these tariffs are a temporary tactic, or a sign of a lasting shift in US-Canada relations? Could Canada realistically build new trade corridors fast enough to replace American demand? Should the US auto industry brace for long-term disruption, or is this just political theater? Will consumers ultimately pay the price for these cross-border power plays? And finally, do you think either country will blink before the April 2nd deadline? Drop your answers in the comments. Let's get the gears turning on this one. And if you haven't already, Hit that subscribe button to stay plugged into the latest vehicle updates, trade developments, and everything in between. Thanks for tuning in to Piston Pundit. See you in the next lap. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.